Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to report the procedures for mixing yeast dough. There are three different methods for mixing the ingredients for yeast breads: the straight dough method, the modified straight dough method, and the sponge method. The straight dough method for mixing yeast dough. The straight dough method is used primarily for making lean yeast doughs, meaning dough that does not contain any fat. The actual ingredient for mixing part of the straight dough method is only one step, as opposed to the multiple steps of the other methods. The straight dough method is the easiest of all of the bread mixing methods. Everything, the ingredients and the yeast, are added to the mixer at the time of mixing. No pre-ferments are involved, and the yeast has gone through any previous fermentation. This is typically done with bread recipes using commercial yeasts. Those rely more on their ingredients than on fermentation for their flavor and texture. Basic steps for the straight dough mixing method used for making yeast bread. First, combine all of the ingredients for the bread together. Second, knead the dough until it is smooth and elastic. Third, cover the dough and let it rise until the volume is double in size. Fourth, press down on the dough to release the gas or punching the dough. Next is shape the bread and let it rise again until double in volume. Then the last one is bake. Some bakers prefer to hydrate their yeast in some of the water before mixing everything together. This is not absolutely necessary anymore. Modern active dry yeast is produced in smaller particles and will hydrate thoroughly even if they are not pre-dissolved. However, some bakers still prefer it for reassurance that it will be completely hydrated. Advantages of straight dough method. The straight dough method is one of the most popular methods for mixing yeast dough. It is quick and easy and is a great introduction for those who are somewhat intimidated by making yeast bread. This mixing method creates a very quick and streamlined process for creating yeast bread. Disadvantages of the straight dough method. The straight dough method produces bread that is not as complex in flavor and texture as yeast breads produced with other methods. This method is not used by the most professional bread bakers because it produces fairly one-dimensional bread. However, the bread made with the straight dough method is still plenty tasty, and this method has its place in the baking world, especially for beginners. Yeast breads made using the straight dough method. First, 4-ingredient rustic bread. Second, easy pizza dough. Third, bread bowls. And the last one is pita bread. The second procedure or method for mixing yeast dough is the modified straight dough method. The modified straight dough method is utilized for combining enriched dough, meaning dough that contains fat, sugar, and sometimes eggs and milk. The purpose of the modified straight dough method is to ensure even distribution of the fat and sugar present in enriched dough. This method is very simple but requires a few more steps compared to the straight dough method. This method ensures that the fat and sugar present in enriched dough is evenly distributed.
Next, modified straight dough method procedure. First, mix the yeast with the liquid. Second, combine the fat, sugar, salt, and flavorings. If the bread includes dry milk powder, this will also be added in the step. Third, add the eggs one at a time, mixing until fully combined before adding the next egg. Fourth, Add the liquid or yeast mixture and stir to combine. 5th, add the flour and mix until it is all saturated. 6. Follow the recipe's procedure for either kneading or following the stretch and fold method for building the gluten structure. Next, follow the recipe's procedure for fermentation. Next, release the gas out of the dough by pressing down in the middle and folding the sides over the top of the dough. Punching. Next, shape the bread and let it rise until double in volume. And last, bake. Next, yes breads made using the modified straight dough method. First, basic sweet yes dough master recipe. Basic sweet yes dough can be used for any sweet bread recipe from dinner rolls to donuts. Second, broiled cinnamon bread. This broiled cinnamon bread is perfect for breakfast or brunch. The broiling technique may look complicated, but it's easy enough. Fresh berries and fruit jams are wonderful complements to this bread, but nothing beats a simple pat of butter on a warm slice. Third, pan pizza with crispy crust. What is pan pizza? Pan pizza is a pizza that is baked in a heavy metal pan, like a cast iron pan, that has high sides. The pan is typically grease heavy, and because it has high sides, the pizza crust thicker and chewy in the middle, while being very crispy and almost fried on the bottom. Fourth, Dijon Stout soft pretzels. Looking for unique game day food for your Super Bowl party? These Dijon Stout soft pretzels are showstopper. Beer and mustards are the quintessential flavors to pair with pretzel. Third, the sponge method for mixing yes dough overview. What is a sponge, aka a preferment? A preferment is when some of the ingredients of the yeast dough are mixed together before the whole dough is made. This mixture is allowed to ferment for a period of time before the rest of the ingredients are added. This process creates more depth of flavor and also produces bread with a lighter and fluffier texture. So, sponge, also known indirect bread dough or sponge mixing method. Bread recipes made from them are also known as artisan, European style, ethnic, natural, or rustic breads. Indirect dough is made built in 2 or more stages utilizing a preferment and sourdough starter, or butter or dough fermented in advance and added to other dough as part of the building process. Once all of the ingredients are assembled, the dough is treated as a direct, straight dough beginning with kneading and ending with baking and cooling, although including techniques unique to the type of bread being made. Most preferments, with the exception of sourdough, use commercial yeast as opposed to wild yeast. Bread can be made with both a sourdough starter and commercial yeast. The indirect bread dough sponge method extends fermentation, allowing for more complex flavor to be teased from the wet molecules and helps make the bread recipe more digestible. The procedure for the sponge mixing method. Step 1. Make the sponge. The liquid, all or part of the yeast, and about half of the total quantity of the flour are mixed together. This makes a thick batter that will be left to ferment until it is double in bulk. Step 2. Make the dough. After the sponge has doubled in size, deflate the air out of it and add the rest of the ingredients. Proceed with the recipe for making the bread. Advantages and disadvantages of the sponge mixing method for yeast bread. The sponge mixing method produces breads that have much more complex flavors and a lighter texture. This method is particularly desirable for whole grain breads. The sponge method does, however, create a longer process for the bread from start to finish. First, we have honey whole wheat sandwich method. This honey whole wheat bread recipe creates such a comforting and hearty bread that tastes much better than store-bought varieties. The bread is fluffy and chewy and work beautifully for sandwiches or for a simple canvas for homemade jam. Also, this recipe calls for 100% whole wheat flour and no white flour, creating a bread packed with flavor. The sponge method is used for mixing the bread dough because it creates even more depth of flavor and supports a lighter texture for whole grain breads. Second, EP bread with stock bread. Wheat stock bread or pain d'Ep in French is a simple French baguette formed to look like a stalk of wheat. It's a simple bread in that it requires no fancy starter or polish and can easily be recreated by a home baker. Third, we have modern sponge white bread. With this recipe, you can make bread the way your grandmother did. It takes more time, but you love the flavor and texture of these loaves. And it should be noted that the sponge mixing method can be used for any bread recipes even if it doesn't specifically call for this method. Thank you for watching.